And Cyrillic letter 4E3 I circumflex Alcidilla letter 3CA Amat Ukit Egrov letter 763 not sent Amat Ed letter 3CA A circumflex Ukit times A tilde R3 Omat until the letter 2BD Cyrillic letter 4ABC acute Chinese letter. But as she thought about the unlocked door, she turned around, feeling like a deer in headlights at the thought of Old by uncovering her little secret. Or maybe it was just the previous scene that spooked. You clutched her pillow, tears streaming down like little raindrops. And the next day she found the nun to share her hair-raising experience from last night. However, the nun didn't seem to believe there were ghosts in the room and told you not to lie. After all, it wasn't easy to find such a generous homeowner. Little Hua and her friends were playing hide and seek when she found a cozy little nook under the stairs, so she slyly slipped in, feeling a twinge of wrongness in her gut. Subtitles. Hua wanted to give her friends a huge surprise again. But little did she know, she scared herself silly with the creepy puppet that seemed to be judging her for beauty contests, staring her down with its soulless gaze. Before she knew it, night fell, and two big sisters wrapped themselves in bedsheets like ghosts, secretly playing a legendary ghost game, giving off serious haunting vibe. Just as they got too into character, a jingling bell sound from the door startled them, and their flashlight went into party mode, flickering wildly. The girl muttered, "Don't come over," but it clearly had no effect. Suddenly, the lights turned on as if the dark girl was there to save the day. The spooky figure vanished, and their screams caught the nuns' attention, but they thought it was Old Bai's wife trying to scare them on purpose. Old Bai, however, said this was pure nonsense because his wife had been bedridden for years. The girls had nothing they could do but take the silent loss. The next day, the nun entered Old Bai's wife's room, finding her truly bedridden and housebound for years, with the fish behind the door unaware. Little Yu turned to leave but spotted Annabelle's picture on the wall, and like a fox catching its prey, she swiftly took it down and brought it back to her room. Suddenly, she seemed to discover a secret to cover Annabelle's picture, and her eyes would glow like a disco ball. Just then a weird sound came from the next room. Gathering her courage, Yu tiptoed over and found an old record player, while little Hua also heard the sound and quietly sneaked in. She picked up Annabelle's toy gun, thinking, "Please, no accidents." Her eyes widened as if they were spinning with fear. Accidentally, she fired a bullet that hit the puppet right on target, and as she turned to head back to sleep, she realized Hua had way more guts than she did. Scared by the puppet's eerie eyes, Hua wanted Yu to leave with her, but Yu straight up refused, making Hua huff and storm off. Meanwhile, Yu noticed a notebook on the table and was lost in thought when suddenly, as if under a spell, the door swung shut, and a bunch of little puppets materialized. The little puppets raised their hands as if to welcome Yu. You have to admit, she was totally unfazed, perfect candidate for a suicide squad. Not planning to leave quickly, she leisurely strolled up to a model of the villa, only to witness a terrifying sight. "What's going on? I need you to help me. What exactly do you require?" "Your heart." At this point, Yu was completely terrified, crawling like a little crab, but the girl behind her seemed determined not to let her go. When Yu finally got out, all the doors suddenly slammed shut, with girls screaming out for everyone, but nobody could hear Yu's cries, and there was no going back into the room. She had to come up with a plan, so she hopped on Old Bai's electric chair, but just halfway down, the chair magically whisked her back upstairs. Subtitles. Immediately following, an even more thrilling scene unfolded. Yu's shoe dropped from the rooftop. Soon after, Yu fell and ended up with bruises all over. The following day, when she returned from the hospital, she recounted everything to the nun, but the nun believed Yu was just having trouble adjusting to the new home and would settle down with time. However, at night, Old Bai suddenly discussed with his wife that bringing the girls here had been a mistake, and he believed Yu didn't just fall down the stairs on her own. His wife insisted it was just an accident, as 12 years had passed. They both clearly knew something. Hua wanted Yu to sleep upstairs with her. But Yu clearly wasn't up for a walk, so she exchanged her doll with Hua, reassuring her that this way, they were both together in spirit. In fact, Hua had sensed what Yu was going through because she felt something was off when she saw the puppet last night. Sure enough, upstairs, she saw through the window the puppet swaying on a chair. Upon opening the door, it vanished. Secrets lurk inside. She fired a bullet from her toy gun at what she thought was Yu, but it felt like little Yu caught the bullet and yanked the toy gun right out of her hands. Suddenly, hurried footsteps came from the dark, scaring Yu into her blanket. Then silence fell. She looked down and saw eerie footprints leading to her low bunk. Could it be that someone was lurking below her, as if they were in the middle of a horror movie? The next day, the nun wheeled Yu outside to soak up the sun, but just as she left, a mysterious woman suddenly appeared. She wheeled Yu's chair straight into the nearby warehouse, and the girl screamed in terror, but it was all in vain as it crashed right in. What followed was a series of bizarre events as the wheelchair started to jolt toward her, while things around her fell haphazardly, blocking the door. With panic, Yu rushed around as her own belongings blocked the door, sending Yu scuttling backward. Subtitles. Just as she believed she was out of danger, she found there was still another girl right next to her. The nun outside the house heard her scream yet when they opened the warehouse door. Yu appeared unscathed, but Yu sensed something was off. She knew something must have happened to Yu, and little did they know. From that moment, Yu was no longer the same. She became Annabelle's new host. The next day, Old Bai found Hua sitting alone by the door and asked why she looked so glum. When Hua mentioned that his wife appeared in her room last night, Old Bai immediately scolded her, knowing full well that his wife had been bedridden for ages. Unless something had possessed his wife, so he grabbed a crucifix and marched inside, bracing himself for a small horror showdown. Subtitles on the table. There still remained the note saying "found you." Just at that moment, the figure of Zaioi appeared behind her, and she was overwhelmed by a surge of intense fear. Old Bai's fingers were bent back at unnatural angles. He tried to scream, but no sound came out, like something was choking his throat. When the nun and others returned from grocery shopping, they found Old Bai had turned into a lifeless corpse. Later that night, little Hua noticed that Puppet had reappeared next to Yu. She sensed that Yu was being controlled by something. So in the dead of night, she tiptoed over and snuck the puppet out of the villa.